it seems to make sense from the point of view of what I call the health of a community. We're just going through the analogy before here is that if you go to a doctor, you have signs and symptoms of how you're doing, right? And a sign is something that is the metrics of our online community. It's something you can actually measure. Your blood pressure is, your rate of respiration is, your white blood cell count is, right? It's stuff you can measure. And the symptoms are the things like, well, I don't feel so good. My stomach, doesn't feel really good. I threw up twice last night, and things like that. So we'd like to come around to some type of agreement of what the signs and symptoms of a healthy community might be, and how we can start to put that on paper and start to actually come up with some type of index. All right. Now we'd like to frame this with 3 points. So one, understanding that there are different types of communities. So we want to, as quickly as we can, define the types of communities that are in existence. 2, go through and say, what do these types of communities look like in real life? All right, and again, one of the impetus for this panel was an absolute brilliant statement by Ryan yesterday when we were talking about relationships. Communities are about relationships. He says, well, how do I measure my relationship with my mother versus my relationship with my father? Right? And that's a really good thing. How do you measure relationships? Well, we'll want to go and say, look, you can, in real life, you can look at your relationship with your mother and your father, and you can know when it's good and when it's not. So we want to take a look at those things in real life and say, how do I know that relationship is good or not? And then lastly, we want to come back to our definition of the various types of communities and say, what are the things that we can say, we can measure, that this is a healthy community or not?
As well as to find out what you're currently using to justify your community's existence, so to speak. Because I'm sure that you have somebody, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a coding group, whether you're an enterprise group, there's somebody who's saying, yes, do this, don't do this, unless it's your own group, and there's something that either keeps you doing it or prevents you from doing something else. And we're kind of looking to figure out what those are and see if there are commonalities and kind of track it and see if those could be the new matrices. For example, on Twitter, does the number of followers really mean that you are more valuable than somebody else or less valuable than somebody else? I don't know. Probably not. Because what's the quality of those people, what those people are saying? Is it just, numbers, or is it quality of what people are saying? And that quality comment came out of the context of, how do you measure a relationship, because it's very personal and individual. And selling that to your executives or your decision makers to justify the existence of a community or of a service or, whatever it is that you're providing or keeping going is not always easy. So we were trying to think of, what are 6 key things that we can maybe come up with and say, yeah, these look like these are reasonable things to say this community is successful versus not so successful, and then try them out for 3 or 6 months and come back and say, yeah, it worked, or no, I found that one totally failed. So to get back into, let's talk about the communities.
Does that resonate with why you're here?
Yeah, I think at the same time it's also, as people that are involved in the community, your attention is divided in many different places, and you have to figure out what's the biggest bang for your time and even sometimes for your buck.
Yeah.
And having metrics is helpful, because if you don't,
right.
you don't know where to devote your time and attention.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't heard the word goals. So you said a number of numbers used with this or that, or actual number you aim for in all those metrics.
Let's use that as the roll into the types of communities, because each type of community will have its own goal. Now, I came up with 4 off the top of my head, and I don't want to dominate the conversation here. I'll throw these out. We can check whether you think they're valid or whether there are other types. The 4 that I came up with, there's a customer support community, where the main intent is to go ask questions and get the questions answered. Right? There's a, for lack of a better thing, a customer suggestion community, where the point is, I want to make this product better. I want to throw ideas into the pot, a suggestion pot. I think many open source communities might fit into that category. I have what I call a community of purpose. And a community of purpose is where there's a pretty specific goal for the community, that people gather together to elect somebody, to raise money to do something, to affect a cause, where there's an action that people are coming together for that they want to see. And then last, I have what I call a community of passion, which might be a fan community. It might be a hobbyist or an enthusiast community. A bunch of bicyclers, people who ride bikes, get together online to talk about biking or karate or HBO or you're developing software. There's no ostensible goal for these people to be there other than to share their passions.
Where would you fit in the kind of community that arises as a side effect of people cooperating on a project? For example, the Wikipedia community.
Say again, a Wikipedia community?
There's a wiki, people edit it, and a community forms, but you had the project going before you really had the community.
Isn't that either purpose or passion? Does that fit into that category?
I don't know.
I'm not
just
saying.
asking.
It sounded to me, what I was doing in my mind as you did that was putting the characteristics to it. The purpose seemed to have a beginning and end.
Right.
Okay, so I don't think Wikipedia has an end.
It could, yeah.
But
And many communities don't, right?
No, but it sounded like when you were saying the purpose was like to elect somebody.
Right.
It had a specific purpose. It seemed like the difference between your purpose and your passion was, where the purpose ones had an end and the Wikipedia one does not have an end. So I think that would fall in your...
Yeah, the end is to get a
But
feel
you
of
can have
people.
both,
Yeah.
because something might evolve from, hey, we want to get Wikipedia up and running and develop a community, and that might be the goal. But once you kind of get it up and running and the people are performing their tasks and the routine is become routine, then maybe it evolves into a passion and we're just a hobbyist type group.
Okay, but I think when he was naming his, I was just trying to, it sounded